As Bill completely ruins Luna's custody case, she punks up a startling new method of being released from prison. As the show started, we saw Steffi again reminding Luna that her child is a child and not a means of escape. Luna responded by accusing Steffi of being self-centered for believing she remained a threat and asserting that after she was liberated, her stepmother would be the last person on her mind. Furthermore, she was still certain that Bill and Katie would not allow their grandson to be delivered in prison. "Do you believe that you know Bill?" "You don't," Steffi told Luna, adding that the baby had only turned her into a predator and not a Spencer. Steffi did not, however, go so far as to refer to what Luna did to Will as rape. How come this show will readily acknowledge that she is a murderer but not a rapist?
Odd.
Katie offers Bill excuses. Will worried at the Spencer estate that Electra was being asked to do too much in the Luna scenario. However, Bill reassured him that the Luna situation would end after 9 months, at which time she would not communicate with Will or the child at all. The businessman went on to say that he had been speaking with an attorney and was certain that the custody dispute will be resolved. Could he have further jinxed himself with those words? How enticing fate is. Will and Katie reviewed everything that had transpired to ruin Bill's relationship with Electra after he left. Katie somehow used the pretzel reasoning to forgive her ex-husband for falling for Luna's scam. "He feels really bad," Katie said. "Is it foreshadowing to say he won't allow her to brainwash him again?" "You're right." Luna is illuminated by Bill. Luna was shocked to see that she had yet another visitor after Steffi left the prison. "Bill, is it only you?" she inquired. Yes, she truly believed Will would have visited her, which is why she is so delulu. As though Bill, who sounded like the dollar bill of old, sternly clarified that Luna and his family had no relationship because of her pregnancy. He went on to say that he was actually planning to remove it from her as soon as the baby was born. He grumbled and said, "The biggest mistake of my life was seeing any glimmer of redemption in you. I ought to have let you rot in here." It is rare, but when he is correct, he is correct. Nor was Bill finished yet. He would now use the same power he had used to secure Luna's release to make sure she never stopped pressing license plates. What did she say? The aforementioned sad face emoji in Luna form. Steffi gets back together with her parents. When Ridge and Taylor stormed into the Cliff home in search of Steffi, Finn informed them that their daughter had gone straight to jail to face Luna. As they waited for Steffi to get home, her parents and husband talked about how she had responded to the news of Luna and how understanding she had been that no one had told her about the shock she would be experiencing upon returning home. When Steffi returned, she was remarkably indifferent to the news that her father had divorced her mother while she was away and had immediately remarried Brooke. That is, initially. Steffi did voice her disappointment shortly after, but she did so in far kinder terms than we could have hoped or anticipated. Dad gets away with a lot of bleep. Subscribe to Soap's bold and beautiful newsletter. The text says, subscribe to receive daily recaps, spoilers, exclusive interviews, and breaking news alerts delivered directly to your inbox. https://cloud, emailed, soaps.com/signup. It's not the first time that Luna has been beaten up by her cellmate. Steffi reiterated at the end of the program that her spouse is attractive, and he said he had missed her a lot. "Now that you're back, that's all that matters," he added, grinning. Finn's famous final words, "She's in prison and she'll never harm you again," apply to Luna. Bill assured Katie and Will that vile creature hadn't affected him when he returned home to his mansion. He even laughed that Luna had assumed that the term grandchild would be as effective as open sesame on the doors of her detention cell. At last, Luna's prison companion laughed that her sugar daddy hadn't come to her aid this time. Luna said, "I need you to do it again," which translates to beat her up. Luna hurried to add, "just not the stomach." Her cellmate was more than willing to comply. Bill Spencer's usual steely confidence seemed to crumble as he stood outside the Los Angeles County Courthouse, realizing that when hearts, children, and fate were the currency at stake, even the sharpest tongue and deepest wallet couldn't buy redemption. Luna Nozawa's name, once whispered as a rising designer, a woman whose laughter once reverberated through the halls of Forrester Creations, now carried the bitter taste of scandal, betrayal, and tragedy, especially after the baby she carried. The one she thought would tether her to a future she had barely begun to imagine, had vanished in that gloomy prison cell, where silence was louder than screams, and even light felt like a luxury stolen by grief. Bill had intended to protect her, or so he told himself, but his powerful meddling, his calculated testimony, and his foolish attempt to keep the Forrestos out of the custody proceedings had instead exploded like a bomb in the courtroom, destroying what little legal standing Luna still had and portraying her as reckless and unfit in the eyes of the law. When the woman he vowed to defend suddenly stared at iron bars rather than open doors, what did winning mean to him? Luna thought that Bill, whose wealth and power had changed countless lives in the past, was the one who could change the course of events when she first walked into that courtroom with shaking hands, facing the judge who would decide her fate. However, she was unaware that Bill's interpretation of salvation frequently had a hidden agenda that made it difficult to distinguish between protector and puppeteer. When Katie Logan, heartbroken but determined, announced her intention to take custody of Luna's unborn child, claiming she could offer stability where Luna could not, Bill's courtroom theatrics only served to reinforce the perception that Luna's world was too unstable for motherhood. His remarks to the press about Luna's fragile mental state, intended to elicit sympathy, were instead weaponized by opposing counsel who spun them as evidence of instability. Bill's conceit and craving for dominance destroyed the very cause he had vowed to support in a single blow, and now that she was imprisoned and had lost her freedom and motherhood, Luna refused to break down. A woman who had experienced the full brutality of life's stage and was now prepared to strike back, both literally and figuratively, in ways no one could have foreseen, replaced the Luna who had once begged for forgiveness. Whispers about Luna's next move started to circulate inside the chilly prison infirmary. The guards had noticed her eyes shift, her stance stiffen, and her once fragile voice now breaking through the cacophony with a determined, piercing tone. She started posing incisive and smart questions concerning the legal flaws in her case, the operation of early release petitions, and wrongdoing by prison employees. As the days went by, it became evident that Luna was accumulating information like a chess master moving her pieces, despite her cellmate's initial belief that she was hallucinating and still grieving over the death of her baby. Luna's intellect became dangerously clear when she heard two officers giggling about fabricated reports that were used to lengthen the sentences of prisoners. What if she had the ability to manipulate the system? What if she could make Bill and the rest of the world perceive her as a survivor who could create her own independence rather than as a victim? Her punch-up plan, as she subsequently referred to it, started out as murmurs in the shadows, a covert tactic that would entail exposing corruption, swaying alliances within the prison administration, and using her public persona as a scapegoat demolished by men seeking power rather than as a fallen lady. On the outside, Bill's empire started to fall apart. Liam attempted to arbitrate between Katie and Bill, warning his father that tampering with the legal system never worked out well, while Wyatt, his oldest son, cautioned him that his fixation on Luna was costing him everything. Bill, however, was unable to let go. Every week he went to see Luna, putting his hand to the glass and promising lawyers, appeals, and atonement, but his words no longer caused Luna's eyes to soften. She had witnessed the harm his influence could cause. One rainy afternoon, she finally told him, "You've done enough, Bill," her eyes unwavering but her voice shaking. It was the first time anyone had ever silenced Bill Spencer, and despite his pride burning, he somehow appreciated her tenacity. "If you want to help me now, stay out of my way." However, Katie's custody battle loomed like a sword, and since Luna was behind bars, the judge sided strongly with Katie, claiming that the kid would have flourished under the Logan household's stability if she had survived. Nobody missed the irony. Bill's ex-lover had used his own testimony as leverage to establish herself as Luna's moral superior. Ever the realist, Steffi Forrester said that perhaps this was for the best and that Luna's problems had escalated, but Finn couldn't get rid of the sense that something more serious was going on. He started looking into Luna's case after noticing her spirit and her refusal to break even when everything else had. He found discrepancies in the police reports that suggested Luna had been set up to protect someone who had much more to lose, as well as false witness statements and evidence that suggested Luna had been framed. When Finn looked further, he discovered linkages that caused Bill's face go white when he was questioned. These relationships led back to political supporters, business rivals, and even a security company that Spencer Publications had hired. "You're claiming that I've been duped?" Bill yelled, but Finn's quiet was sufficient response. Luna's punch-up tactic was becoming more popular back in prison. She had discovered supporters among prisoners who had also experienced miscarriages while incarcerated, creating an unexpected alliance of women committed to bringing attention to the institutionalized abuse they faced. They worked together to gather witnesses, smuggle letters, and even recruit an investigative journalist who had previously covered the problems at Forrester Creations. Luna's name made news once more as the story, a damning exposé about medical incompetence in women's prisons, came to light, but this time as a symbol of courage rather than scandal. As public scrutiny of Katie's custody case grew, Bill decided that his silence might be his only chance for redemption and chose not to make a statement. As Luna transitioned from prisoner to advocate, the world watched as her sorrow fueled a cause greater than herself. In private, though, Luna's rage remained simmering, particularly at the men who had saved her just to shackle her further. One evening, Luna became enraged, not depressed, but impulsive, after learning that her request for an early release had been turned down in spite of copious proof of systemic abuse. She spoke straight into the camera during a prison interview that was shown on television, her eyes blazing. She remarked, "You can take everything away from me, but you can't make me stop talking. You can't hide the truth, even if you lock me away." The video went viral right away. "I'm coming for my freedom, and when I get it, I'm coming for every single person who tried to take it from me." 2 guards were suspended, the jail warden resigned the following day, and the state reopened Luna's case a week later on the grounds of procedural irregularities. Her punch-up tactic had succeeded, not by using force, but by using strategy and intelligence to weaponize opposition. Watching from his office, Bill finally recognized her for what she was, a woman taking back control of her own destiny rather than a damsel in distress. He felt a wave of regret. In his attempt to own her, he had damaged her. Haunted by Luna's televised remarks, Katie too started to doubt her intentions. "One day," she said, "Donna, perhaps we all underestimated her. Perhaps she isn't the damaged kid we believed her to be. Perhaps she's the only one still waging the good fight." Tension swelled in Los Angeles' elite circles as Luna's name cleared and her release loomed. Would she be going back to work for Forrester Creations? Would she pardon Bill? Would she burn everything down or take back what had been stolen? Luna was blinded by the flash of the cameras when she eventually emerged from those prison gates, but she didn't flinch. With her chin up and her voice steady, she strode directly toward the microphones. She remarked, "I've been called a failure, a criminal and a liar. However, I made it through. Where no one was supposed to look, I discovered the truth." Even Steffi, who was watching from home, sensed a change when she said, "And now I'm going to make sure no other woman has to go through what I did." Her words were like thunder. It was briefly unrelated to controversy, fashion, or family conflicts. It told the story of a lady who rebuilt herself after crawling out of her own ashes. Later that night, Bill came up to her, but he kept a polite distance. "Luna," he said in a quiet, quite unidentifiable voice, "I don't expect forgiveness. However, I want you to know that I have faith in you." Luna's lips curled into a slight smile of recognition rather than reconciliation. "All right," she said. She turned and left Bill standing in the golden wash of sunset, the man who had controlled empires now humbled by the lady he had once attempted to save. "Because now I believe in me, too." Luna's campaign gathered steam in the weeks that followed. She established a charity for mothers who were incarcerated, advocated for reform, and emerged as a symbol of tenacity in a society that had attempted to eradicate her. To make that loss mean something, she vowed to keep fighting and never forgot the baby she lost, speaking its name every night before bed. The world of Bold and the Beautiful marveled as Luna Nozawa, who had previously been characterized by controversy, emerged as the story's surprising heroine. Her punch-up was not only a proclamation of rebirth, but also a strategy for freedom. And somewhere, in the quiet nooks and crannies of Los Angeles where secrets are buried and agreements are done, Bill Spencer came to see that real strength lay in letting go rather than in controlling, since Luna had shown that you can still rise, stronger, louder, and unbroken, even when everything else seems hopeless. However, Luna quickly discovered that freedom was a complex form of liberty because leaving the prison grounds did not take away the memory of the nights she sobbed herself to sleep on a concrete slab or the muffled sound of her baby's heartbeat. Her increased strength was like armor, but behind it were raw, unhealed wounds. Whispers, rather than celebrations, greeted her return to Los Angeles. Uncertain of whether she would return as a reckoning or a redeemed lady, the Forresters held their breath. As watchful as ever, Steffi cautioned her family. She told Ridge, "She's been through hell." But Finn couldn't conceal the silent respect that glowed in his eyes as he said, "Don't underestimate what that does to someone." As he watched Luna's first televised interview as a free woman, he muttered, "Perhaps she's finally become who she was always meant to be." And maybe he was correct, since Luna had changed from being someone who once judged her value by the opinions of others. She was sharper now, colder, but unquestionably wiser. Every action she took and every word she spoke was calculated. Luna took a while to react when Forrester Creations made a kind invitation to collaborate on a future fashion line, which was intended as a PR tactic as well as a gesture of reconciliation. Rather, she waited while the media conjectured. Weeks later, she unexpectedly entered Forrester's design studio, dressed in a plain cream suit that instantly attracted notice. There was silence in the room. Hope Logan's eyes widened as she looked up from her doodles. Steffi's mouth tensed. What may have been guilt tempered Ridge's expression. Luna gave a small smile. With a steady gaze and an even tone, she remarked, "I see some things never change." She was seeking closure on her own terms, which was far more hazardous than an apology. Over the course of the following few days, Luna's presence roused long-buried things. Old allegiances were put to the test. Hope made an effort to be a friend, but Luna wasn't prepared to forgive so readily. Luna whispered to her, "You once felt sorry for me. Now you can watch me win." Bill watched from a distance, haunted by his own guilt. He was unsure of how to put things right for the first time in his life. She turned down the roses he sent. She returned the check he sent for her foundation. He eventually showed up at her office without warning one evening, just like he used to do when he wanted to dominate her. However, Luna didn't recoil this time. "Bill, why are you here?" Without raising her gaze, she inquired. He answered, "Because I have to say something I have never said before. I was mistaken. I attempted to manipulate your life." Luna stared at him with unfathomable eyes.